Sports, Clips, and Politics with your hosts, Hussong and me, Shawn Hannon. Welcome to episode 119 of Sports, Clicks, and Politics, a remote edition, a non-live episode, and Mr. Hussong, are you celebrating a repeal day edition of Sports, Clicks, and Politics? Where are you again?
I'm visiting the lovely state of Ron DeSanctimonious down in sunny Florida.
And is it sunny?
It is beautifully sunny.
Oh, that's nice. Will you be giving us an ability to, I don't know, give us a taste of the sunny weather? It looks like there's a window behind you, no?
Yeah, it's right out here. I'm out on the back porch right now.
Oh, yeah, there it is. Nice.
These blue skies and sunshine.
And look at you. I made you just mess up the camera. And I told you to...
After all the work you just did to get me situated perfectly, you make me screw it up right after.
Yes, sorry. Well, so anyway, you guys, this will not be a live edition, so anybody who's hearing this for the first time, or seeing this for the first time, I should say, on the video, know that this is pre-recorded. Restarted here after some technical situations at about 11:42 a.m. So if a meteor hits sometime in the next 2 hours after the show ends, then we weren't around to cover it because it was pre-recorded. So with that, please leave the show a rate and review if you're listening at home. I'll give you guys a shout out first, all you audio listeners at home. And then if you are at home watching this, either on YouTube, Rumble, or wherever we may be, please leave us or share this video, like this video, and subscribe to the channel. Real quickly, not trying to go into too much here, but hopefully soon on Twitter, Mr. Hussong. It seems like, though, that might be in our future. I know we did it for the election day, but I think that's going to be part of our broadcast future if your boy Elon gets his way. So, anyway, I don't want to say how's your weekend because you're in Florida, so I already know how that is. But how is what was the trip down there like? Are you down there for rest and relaxation, or are you doing some work?
Little column A, little column B. We did come down after we shut down the ice cream shop for a couple of weeks. So we drove down Monday afternoon right after the show. And we went to the Lake Caverns in Virginia, which was absolutely incredible. I highly recommend you see it. Like 170 feet below ground, incredibly beautiful caverns that have been formed there. That same day, we drove over to Monticello, the home of Thomas Jefferson, to go check that out for a few hours, which was also exceptionally beautiful, and I highly recommend it to everybody. Kids had a blast looking around and seeing all that stuff. Drove down to Savannah, Georgia from there. We were planning on spending like most of the morning sightseeing in Savannah, but it was raining, and then we found out when we went to Duck Donuts that there was an active shooter in a nearby school, so we decided to hightail out of Savannah instead of going 6 blocks away from that.
Wait, you didn't think apprehending an active shooter was part of a Hussong weekend?
I mean, with my children, with me, obviously the thought crossed my mind.
I mean, this is a homeschooling moment, Mr. Hussong. Should be a homeschooling moment where active citizenry is on display. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead. Sorry.
Somebody did it, as apparently this is a trend where people call these things in even though it's just a hoax. So it turned out to be a hoax, thank God. So it turned out to be nothing. But during that time, we drove down to Jacksonville, Florida, had lunch at a local brewery there, the Flaming Barley, I think it was, which was excellent, and then finished the ride to Tampa, got in Wednesday evening, and have been here ever since. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Savannah and Jacksonville. So when we go to Florida, and we'll be doing this again in February, those are the two cities we always eyeball on the way down, obviously for convenience reasons, being close to 95 there. But I have yet to stop in Savannah. Like, that's one of the places, I've heard great things, but have never actually done anything where I'm kind of getting to absorb the Savannah-ness of Savannah, I guess. But have been to Jacksonville. It's okay. But, I mean, it's better than, when I'm going to Florida, it's great to finally get into Jacksonville, I promise you. And, hey, if you're in Virginia on the way back, do you end up ever go through Fredericksburg?
Not this trip, no. I think we've gone through it previously.
So I will, after you're done here with talking to me, go to my Facebook page and get more of me and watch the video that I shared this morning. So there's a restaurant, and I maybe have mentioned this to you in the past, Gourmelts. It's in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and they were the restaurant that I purposely stopped at because they were not enforcing the mask mandate on the way down. I think I was going to North Carolina at the time, back in April or May of 2021. So great. Well, anyway, the Liquor Authority of Virginia, he that whole thing, he had basically had his liquor license suspended. And I know we're getting off track here, but I think this is important. So Gourmelts is the name of this restaurant. So please look them up. They are somebody who I would avidly encourage you to support. Was not enforcing any of the COVID mandates that Virginia state law had done, basically. So they had their liquor license suspended, but I think they call it the ABC, whatever the Virginia version of the Liquor Authority is, basically said, we're not going to enforce this while you appeal, right? So they kind of, I don't know, basically said, we're not going to enforce this. We're suspending the suspension of your liquor license while you appeal this. So anyway, in November of this year, the appeal was finally ruled against him, and they came in and dozen state trooper liquor authority folks, because he just kept selling alcohol anyway, and basically did not comply like a freaking badass, and then just kept selling it. They came in and they just took all of his stuff. He recorded it. So that's what I shared this morning. So I would encourage you and all others to support Gourmelts, as the owner is now running for state senate, which is also something I think I could get behind there just for pure principle's sake. I don't know anything about the dude other than I want to go work for him at some point in my life, just because I go volunteer my services. But anyway, so I know we got sidetracked there, but a COVID thing, and obviously we just made the show a lot longer, but support Gourmelts, I promise you. And look up that, you can find them on, I think, forgot the owner's name, Matt now, but he's running for, I think, state senate in Virginia. So Matt4VA is his Twitter handle, so go hang out with him there. So what about does your travel thing mess up with your NFL viewership this weekend?
It did not. I actually watched more football this weekend than I have in months.
That's because you're not working on freaking Four Seasons rooms or rabbits or chickens.
That's it.
So obviously the Bills
there was nothing to do.
Yeah, Bills played Thursday, but any hot takes with the some of the NFL games around? You want to talk about the Cowboys' big win? I don't know. Chiefs, Joe Burrow 3-0 versus Pat Mahomes. Is that a thing? I don't know. What were your takeaways anyway from the NFL? Yeah, go ahead.
Joe Burrow appears to own Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen appears to own Bill Belichick. And Aaron Rodgers still owns the entire city of Chicago.
3 hot takes. I kind of agree with all those, actually.
You might as well make it mayor.
Yeah. So I'm trying to look through here. None of these. I mean, the Chiefs Bengals game was kind of like the one game that I had circled. I'm like, oh, I know this is going to turn out. And then the Dolphins, I wanted to see what they looked like going against the Niners. Niners lost Garoppolo. They lose him for the year. I didn't follow up with there. It looked like I saw they signed some backup quarterback. So I'm assuming it's not good.
He is done for the season.
All righty. Well, good thing they got Christian McCaffrey, I guess. Does that change?
Christian McCaffrey just became the most valuable fantasy football player in the league.
Where's guys like Phillip Rivers hang out? It seems like I don't know about an obvious choice because I don't know about the system fit and whatnot, but he could definitely throw the ball around, probably get it better than whoever else they got out there, but at least some low-scoring games
I don't
here.
know.
Ravens, Broncos, 10-9. Solid. Yeah, I don't know. The Eagles still look really good. I got to say that. I watch a lot of the Eagles game. Jalen Hurts looks legit, like top 5 kind of quarterback legit. Are they? If you're the Bills, you're in the Super Bowl. You've done your duty. You've gotten past the Joe Burrow and the Patrick Mahomes and the Tuas of the world, and you're sitting in the Super Bowl. You don't want to see the Eagles, do you? I mean, the Vikings are
that's just a very complete team.
They're really good. I think I would take anybody else other than the Eagles. I would take I don't think anybody else in the NFC could actually win. Maybe the Cowboys if they get hot, but their Cowboys defense is legit. I don't know. I don't really have any hot takes. Steelers won. They're going to try to keep Tomlin's record of never having a losing season intact.
That's great.
Yeah, it was kind of a ho-hum week in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there was no huge surprises. The Giants and the Commanders tying was unusual, but it happens.
Unusual, but expected.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way of saying it. Like, it's not surprising that they tied. And the Chiefs losing to the Bengals is sort of becoming a story at this point. That's 3-0 for Joe Burrow. And that's kind of a big deal because the Bengals don't seem to own any other team, and the Chiefs seem to own every other team.
Yeah, well, hopefully you guys, as Bills fans, can just hope they meet each other before they get to you guys.
From your mouth to God's ears, my friend.
All right, let's switch gears and update on a story that we covered. I think it was last week, maybe it was the week before. I can't remember now. Everything is such a crazy time of life. Our not-so-favorite handbag company, Balenciaga. Can I get an update on this, Mr. Hussong? Check this out. So remember we had talked about this, whatever it was, that Balenciaga was actually going to sue the design company or whatnot that was who set up the disgusting child-focused sales with BDSM bondage bears or whatever, Fashion House drops $25 million lawsuit that blamed the production company for a twisted child bondage shoot and allows creative director Demna to keep his job. So there goes that. They just dropped it all. Basically, this article, this is from the Daily Mail, basically cites public pressure from high-profile sponsors of Balenciaga as reason to undo this lawsuit. Seems mind-bogglingly backwards to me. But I feel like in hindsight, the $25 million seems to be just a PR ploy, a distraction to make it look like they were doing something when in full well they knew that they were part of the game anyway and probably weren't going to win this lawsuit. I don't know. I just wanted to touch on this because this was one of the stories that I actually talked about, was that they were instituting this lawsuit, and now they are not, Mr. Hussong. So any takes on the fact that Balenciaga has decided not to pursue this litigation and is just going to move on like nothing happened?
Yep, it is. This feels an awful lot like when the Pentagon investigated itself for that drone bombing of the innocent aid workers that they actually covered up and tried to claim was a successful terrorist cell that they hit. And then got found out, like, all right, fine, we'll investigate it. Somebody's going to pay for this. Heads will roll. And they came back and said, well, nobody made any mistakes. Everything's followed. Everybody did everything right. Sorry. This feels like that. Like, this feels like there's no plausible way that there should be no accountability, and yet that's exactly what's going to happen. There's going to be zero accountability. Everybody's going to move on, and in about 6 months, if you bring it out, if you bring it up, people will roll their eyes at you and tell you that you're just a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. It's
wash, rinse, repeat.
This is probably the sanest story that Balenciaga was involved with, because we're going to get to Kanye later in the show with that crazy man, but he's been rocking Balenciaga stuff every time he shows on this media tour. So this is, I don't know, probably good news, or Balenciaga is probably happy he's got some extra distraction, but crazy that this is out in the open so obviously, and that, again, nothing is going to happen. People always ask me, what do you think is going to happen? Like, nothing ever happens. Nothing ever happens. For all of it. The Hunter Biden laptop, we'll get into that later. The Jeffrey Epstein, the Balenciaga, nothing ever happens. Nothing. We just deal with it, and we just move on. Like, just store it away. Like, hey, this is something else, like this is going to happen again, and nobody's going to get punished for it, and nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change, and here we are. I don't know. It's crazy. Speaking of that, let's move on to something else that never happened. But maybe this is something happened, Mr. Hussong. So we talked about how Donald Trump was being sued for rape by a former, I think it was a reporter, fashion person, I don't know, in some dress in a restroom at some department store, I think it was. A second person is using New York's new Adult Survivors Act. Leon Black. What was this, Apollo guy, right? Is that what he was? I forgot what he even ran anymore. Anyway, Leon Black, one of the richest dudes in the world, being sued for and I'm going to read the headline here, bombshell lawsuit accuses Leon Black of brutal rape in Epstein mansion. So, I don't know if this is, again, there's a year window in this New York state law. New York, man, if people start going down for this, people are going to take, that law is not going to make it through the year. But anyway, so right now the way it works, victims have, adult victims that is, this is basically mirroring a child survivors act that was basically for crimes that were past statute of limitations, and they were going to give this window for, and this is, in this act, it was adults who have been victims of a sexual assault in any way. This gives them I think it's a year-long window that allows them to kind of seek retribution, right? And so here we had the Donald Trump one, and now we have a Leon Black. And if you guys don't know, I feel like it's probably in this article here. Leon Black is given hundreds of millions of dollars to Jeffrey Epstein for apparently no reason at all, just for being charming. So I don't want to be optimistic that this is going to bring out, or this law, in a sense, is going to bring out some of the true disgustingness of this story, but I don't want to ignore it either. So I don't know. Do you have any hot takes on Leon Black being sued in connection with Jeffrey Epstein? You're muted.
No, I don't have any hot takes.
No, I don't have
the. What's that?
Go ahead.
I think the odds are overwhelmingly that he did it. I think that it's probably a good basis in reality. I'm very excited to see that the lawsuit was filed. I hope that if, in fact, he is guilty, that he's held accountable. You hit the nail on the head. If they do start getting people close to Epstein with this, then they're going to take the law away.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. Just to watch it all unfold and see if that actually does happen. So, I don't know. Like I said, we talked about the Trump one. I figured I'd bring this one up too, and obviously it touches on some Epstein stuff that we've talked about in the past. So, figured we'd do a quick update. And I'll keep an eye on it, on that trial, and we'll see what happens. But I did get there was a opening. So in the courtroom today, speaking of Epstein, we mentioned that there were some victims suing some banks, J.P. Morgan, for example, and Deutsche Bank. So today there was some kind of preliminary something in the Southern District where a couple of the lawyers were in there. So there should be some updates coming on that lawsuit here pretty quickly too. So I don't know. We'll keep an eye on the Epstein lawsuits here, or any of the fallout from this new New York State law here, especially, again, you know, that mansion. I'm sure this is not the only thing that happened in that mansion. And so if there's a window of opportunity for these victims to kind of claw back some of that damages, this is it. So maybe we'll see something. I don't know. Let's talk about another story that we talked about. Let's update another story that we talked about here over the past couple of weeks, craziness of FTX and the collapse of FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried and all the nonsense that goes along with there. So I don't think we talked about this specifically, though, but did you happen to watch any of the interview from that deal book thing for the New York Times thing?
No, I didn't watch any of it.
It was terrible, just for the record. I mean, it was... I think I sent you the link to the Good Morning America interview with George Stephanopoulos. Basically, at least that dude had Bankman-Fried cornered. He probably admitted to committing crimes in that interview, and I guess credit to George Stephanopoulos for getting there, but he knew that the problem, the illegality of the commingling of funds between FTX and Alameda, was the biggest story of the whole thing, and how they can, if they can show that it was known to be going, and it seems like they've been knowing from the beginning that was the case. And to Stephanopoulos' credit, he questioned Bankman-Fried, and he got to the point where he said unknowingly or not knowingly, but he looked cooked, man. I guess he's been going on these interviews, Sam Bankman-Fried, that is, against the wishes of his lawyers and advice of his lawyers, and I think he's doing damage to himself. I think I think I didn't follow up on this because I saw it just before we were going to record that he may have declined the invitation. I don't know if it was required or not to testify in front of Maxine Waters, his girl there, in the Senate Finance Committee or something there. So I don't know. He may have finally listened to his lawyers at the wrong time, but I don't know. Did you watch that Stephanopoulos interview at all?
No, I didn't get a chance to watch all of it. I only saw bits and pieces. But Sam Bankman-Fried, the more that I'm watching him, the more I'm coming to the conclusion that he's just he believes his own legend. Like he believes he is what they built him to be. So he's like, no, I can handle these reporters. And whoever's handling him has got to be sitting there. No, please, for the love of God, just don't do it, you dumbass. Don't do it, you dumbass. Stop talking because you're going to get yourself from prison. And the more that they dig, the more they're going to find. There's plenty more to find here.
Yeah, like I said, he's definitely not doing himself any good out on the circuit. It seems like a bad idea. So, again, that's a story that we will definitely keep an eye on. But the fact that let me show you this one. I think this was the article I brought up. Oh, no, here it is. Sorry. But this is, I don't think I sent you this article here. And this is kind of what I wanted to touch on in regards to Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX. So this is in, let me read this headline here. Congress members tried to stop SEC's inquiry into FTX. The Blockchain 8, which is a bipartisan group of small little caucus of Congress critters, the Blockchain 8 wrote a bipartisan letter in March attempting to chill the SEC's information requests to crypto firms. FTX was one of those firms. So there's, I don't know if it's 4 and 4, but there's these 8 congressmen who make up this 8 group committee here, and they all receive money from FTX. They all, among others. And it seems as though they were trying to at least slow down the SEC looking into them. I'm trying not to give the SEC too much credit here, but maybe this just creates plausible deniability on their part. I don't know. But it seems as though Sam Bankman-Fried had weaseled his way into more than just, listen, we know how much money he's been given to Democrat campaigns, but apparently he had worked his way into enough Republicans anyway to have some influence and to make sure that FTX was at least attempted to stay out of the mud. This seems like bad. I want to give credit to some of these congressmen for being forward thinking and adopting crypto, but this is exactly the opposite of that. This is just being bought. They probably, this is just literally just playing politics.
Yeah, this is just sad. But hey, listen, I think if anything's going to legitimize cryptocurrency in the mind of the general public, it's once you start buying corrupt politicians, people just think you're legit. It works in the insurance industry, the banking industry, the funeral home industry, the agricultural industry, the meat processing industry, the defense industry. What the hell? This is part of the American dream.
Yeah, well, I guess if you don't have those connections, who are you? I don't know. This is all, like I said, this is definitely not going to be the last that we've heard of FTX, but I don't know. I'm sure there'll be more that we'll get to cover.
I forgot.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The pharmaceutical industry as well.
What?
Also, see, people
that's not true. You've gone too far now.
What you're doing is, so long as you've got enough congressmen and senators on the take.
All right. So let me share let's go next on to, this might have been the most shocking headline that, for me, I would never have expected what actually came of this headline. And so I can get everybody at home caught up to speed, and I want to get the video caught up to my audio here. So let's move on here. New York Times, European news outlets call on the U.S. to drop charges against Assange. So we've covered this a few times here on the show. Julian Assange basically being held prisoner for publishing the news and basically showing the United States and the military-industrial complex to be nefarious actors and to cover up when they cover up their nefarious actions, even if bad, with good intentions or bad intentions, anything. He basically have exposed them. it seems as though, and again, we are waiting. He's being held in the Ecuadorian assembly, or the what do you call it there? I'm losing my mind now. Embassy, and basically has used up all of his legal challenges here or there in the United Kingdom, and is basically just waiting extradition to the United States to be tried here on basically Espionage Act charges. I don't know if you saw that during the Elon live spaces, Kim.com, a big crypto guy, an internet guy, very popular. I think he's in like New Zealand or something. But anyway, so he got Elon to run a poll about Edward Snowden and Julian Assange to see if he thought those should be basically pardoned. Last time I checked, with like 3 million votes, it was 80-20 yes. So the people have spoken. Let's go. But anyway, I'm stunned that the New York Times actually put out that this was a threat. I mean, listen, in fairness, they published the news that Julian Assange, exactly the same stuff that Julian Assange published. And if Julian Assange is in prison for it and going to be charged on the Espionage Act, who in the New York Times is not going to? He published the same thing. So I don't know. Did you see this? Were you at least pleasantly surprised by this revelation here in the world's newspaper or whatever they call it?
Pleasantly shocked would probably be a better way of saying it, but they finally came out. It is an act of self-interest, which is what was so confusing for all these past years when they wouldn't say that. And now all of a sudden they're finally doing it.
Yeah, listen,
it's just crazy.
Who's going to make the decision? I mean, Biden's not making any decisions, right? So, like, who would they have to actually influence to get this pardon? I mean, listen, if I was a Joe Biden camp and I wanted to try to win back some freaking good graces with the people, this is one of the things that I would be jumping on. I mean, obviously he's at risk because who knows what freaking Julian Assange is going to release on Joe Biden. But anyway, the idea that the press, Julian Assange, is not being held to the same kind of standards, and that somehow he is held to some antiquated Espionage Act has been mind-boggling from the beginning. And to your point, the fact that mainstream media companies and outlets who publish the very same information used WikiLeaks as the source, like that it was them who published the material, would be subjected to the same type of potential punishment from the U.S. government, which is obviously not great for free speech and a free press by any means. It's crazy.
More journalists and the more newspapers that come out against this ridiculous use of the Espionage Act, the better it is for everybody.
I think I might have one more news story that I don't know if I brought this to your attention or not, or if you're aware of this, but here it is. Did you know, Mr. Hussong, Rumble has sued New York State for their new social media law? Basically, I don't know if you saw New York passed this, ways for platforms that they're protocols, if you will, for social media platforms on how they're supposed to publish or respond to hate speech and incitements to violence and all this stuff. So New York State passed this law basically saying, hey, if you're going to, operate in New York State, you have to abide by all this stuff. And Rumble has sued them. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this works out. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, otherwise known as FIRE, has also helped with this case. So I wanted to bring this up because it kind of touches home here, since we're in the New York State and we're on Rumble, that the Rumble is going after the New York State new social media law, whatever they want to freaking call it. But I was happy to see this, so I wanted to kind of bring that to your attention. I don't know if you had saw that or not.
No, I haven't seen it. I'm not familiar with it. But again, I'm on board.
Yeah, New York State obviously is everything. They literally are trying to just strip away the Constitution wherever they can, and then just fight it out in the courts, which is nobody sees. I mean, I hope people see it. They don't, but it's crazy.
New York's brutal because all they want to do is strip away your individual rights and act as if because they're a state, they have the right to do whatever they want. Which don't get me wrong, the state's power should exceed that of the federal government where they're not in direct conflict. But that doesn't mean you get to trump the individual rights guaranteed to every American citizen. And so for some reason, New York State is very reminiscent of the Jim Crow South thinking state rights trump all. That didn't work out the last time that was made, and it shouldn't work out this time. It's not for the greater good. The right of the individual should trump everything else.
Yeah. So, and again, this is completely sidetracked because I didn't, but you as a New York State business owner, did you get the memo that the interest on all of your unemployment insurance is due by your responsibility to pay back now instead of everywhere else in the country except for New York State? Apparently, it was one of only couple states, if not the only state, who didn't pay the interest on the unemployment for the federal government unemployment during COVID, and now it's being passed on to the business owner. So expect a nice little chunk of something in your IRS bill.
I would love to tell you I'm surprised at all by that statement, but I've been dealing with New York State for entirely too long.
All right, let's move on to some craziness here. So before we move on to the last two stories, Kanye's media tour and the Twitter files, crazy stories that they are, let's remind the folks at home to, again, please rate and leave us a 5-star rating review if you're listening at home on the audio version, and like the video, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you are at home on the video channels, either Rumble, YouTube, or wherever you may be listening to us or watching us. It's very much appreciated, and it does help us out, get the show discovered, and get some of our crazy news ideas out there. So let's move on to the craziest of all.
I do apologize. I'm having some audio. I'm having some video issues. So
yeah, we can tell.
I have a screenshot of my kids on a Navy ship.
Yeah, we just got a blue screen right now, so you're good. But it's perfect. It's definitely noticeable anyway. I mean, we can hear you just great, so we're good.
Okay, that works.
All right. So two things. I didn't know that I was actually going to bring up and talk about the Kanye stuff because honestly, the initial reaction on the Timcast IRL was obviously very anticlimactic. But I was just going to bring it up that he was making kind of a public tour until the Alex Jones thing's on. But first things first. Chronological order, I guess. So Kanye's been going on other stuff too, and I watched the Lex Friedman interview. I thought it was bonkers, honestly, there, and Lex was, trying to maintain some kind of, I don't know, like it doesn't say he lost control, but there was nothing being absorbed there. They were talking in circles, I felt like. So then he was on Piers Morgan. I didn't see any of that interview, so who knows what that was. But then he ends up on Timcast. I'm like, all right, I watch Timcast on a pretty regular. Let me see what this is all about. He's bringing in these crazy other guys, Milo and Nick Fuentes, known provocateurs, to say the at least. They make it basically a full, 25 minutes of live on the Timcast before Kanye walks out, because Tim basically says they is the corporate media and not some Jewish cabal, and somehow that is enough to get under Kanye's skin, and he walks off. Fuentes and Milo follow off. They jet out of there and see ya, right? They just catch a plane to California. And that wasn't such a big story, other than just, I was like, okay, that's interesting that this all happened, but I don't know that it would have been on the show until he ends up on the Alex Jones show. I don't know if you saw some of these clips, Mr. Hussong, but he basically made Alex Jones seem like Walter Cronkite. The Alex Jones was trying to throw him life preservers, and Kanye was doing everything he can to knock him down, knock him to the ground, and just wanted to praise the people and those folks that he wanted to praise, and it went off the rails so fast. First of all, he shows up in a full head mask, reminiscent, and I'm assuming this is somewhat factually. If wasn't a Balenciaga mask, it was to imitate a Balenciaga mask that his ex, Kim Kardashian, wore at some award ceremony, that she was covered completely in black, including her face, and had some long bat cape. So clearly this is an homage to that getup. But then he goes off and just literally starts talking about stuff that we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube. I don't really want to kind of get into anything of what he's talking about other than I think this dude's losing his mind. Listen, his divorce was finalized on Monday, the same day as the Timcast show. I'm assuming that hit home differently than most days. And maybe he just didn't want to be there, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that was just a weird time. And obviously, he feels like he's being conspired against, so he's circling the wagons, but seems like he's trying to take everybody out. And one thing I want to touch on, and then I'll get your full take on all of this, but is the idea that this is all on the heels of Kanye showing up at Mar-a-Lago for having dinner with Trump, right? And all the heat that Trump took. It seems as though that dinner and everything that's followed up until this point may have been a direct attack on the Trump campaign for his lack of support backing up the Milo Yiannopoulos of the world. It seems as though Milo may have been the puppet master here, and unfortunately he's taking advantage of somebody with an immense fortune, or at least had an immense fortune, but somebody who's having in the middle of a mental breakdown, and somebody who's just basically constantly trying to be replatformed, that is Milo and Nick Fuentes. So there's a whole lot there. I know I just left it all there, but I mean, first of all, I don't know how much of this you saw, how much of it you want to actually comment on, but there's a lot there, so I don't know. Have at it.
I mean, Kanye does appear to be on a break from reality. It's hard to not feel bad for the guy, and this is something that I guess we've witnessed before, and I don't want to take anything away from the accomplishments he's had, not just as an artist, but in business. I mean, he's done tremendously well for himself. He's been very successful. There's a lot of stuff about this that just doesn't add up. I can't make sense of it yet. Like the idea that celebrity trainer, whoever it was, they released that text message where he said he was going to put him back into La La Land, comatose again, and then this time he wouldn't come out if he didn't stop. That's weird. Yeah. Why is that an okay thing to say? I don't care what this guy did. What do you have as a celebrity trainer to make somebody go comatose for months on end and never see their kids? That seems wrong. And maybe worth somebody looking into. None of that excuse is coming out and saying like Hitler was a good dude. That's some crazy shit.
Yeah, but it seems purposely crazy, right? I mean, like, I'm not even dismissing the fact that he may actually believe all the things that he was saying. He probably does, but he knows the reaction that's going to happen. Like, he's purposely trying to go for the reaction. It's not that, I don't think he was trying to make a media tour where he was going to validate all the accomplishments of the Nazi regime, right? Like, that wasn't his intended. Like, he wasn't trying to make some scholarly defense of the technological advances of them, right? He was clearly just trying to push as many buttons as he possibly could, take down as many people, it seemed as though, take down as many people he could with him. And, it seemed as though Tim Pool at least was going to be like, hey, we don't agree. Where Alex Jones was kind of like, hey, go say whatever you want to say. And that lasted hours. I mean, he was on Alex Jones for hours. So,
when you can make Jones look like the reasonable, calm, the voice of reason in the room, you have done an accomplishment. Like, that is no small feat, and we should appreciate that.
Especially right now.
We can.
Like, Alex Jones is being erased off the map. And right now, he looks better than Kanye. I mean, Kanye's being erased off the map, too, I guess.
I don't know what's going to happen. Because this just seems like if this is just a mental breakdown, this is the worst one I think we've ever witnessed publicly. And he just keeps going more and more. So it makes me think there's a piece of this I'm not seeing. And maybe I'm just overly analyzing, which is entirely possible.
That's what we do,
but it makes me think there's more to this.
Yeah, I don't think he's done. I mean, if I had to pick right now, I think this is going to end terribly. And I don't even know what that means, but it's not going to be nice. Like, there's going to be a bigger headline coming out of him than not, I guess. And I don't know. It's sad in some ways. because you can see the guy to me, he looks broken. Like he just looks and he's like, I'm just going to go out swinging. Like they're taking all my money. They took my kids. They took my wife. They took my sanity. They took my freedom. I'm just going down in a kamikaze style mission, and so far succeeding.
Points for effectiveness.
Yeah.
My God, I've never seen anything quite like this. And this is what I mean. I guess I should watch the entire interview in full context. Although admittedly, I don't really want to because I get no joy out of watching somebody.
You can see enough of the clips in there, but there's long enough clips you can see that he's just reaching for stuff on purpose, I think.
Yeah. Listen, there's some people that if they lost it and just unraveled in front of my eyes, I would relish in it. And Kanye's just not on that list. I can't tell you I was like ever huge Kanye West fan. I liked his music like everybody else did, but never something where I was like, I'm going to follow him around on tour. But he never seemed to do anything that deserved this. That's a really sad thing.
Yeah. No. Again, I'm sure this won't be the last segment we do on Ye, so hopefully the next one is something more cheerful, but I'm not expecting it. So, all right, let's finish up on what we've kind of, I say, not shocking and not surprising, but still shocking and surprising when you read through some of this stuff. So, Matt Taibbi, being referred to now in liberal media circles as Substack Man, as somehow that's a derogatory comment because he succeeded outside of the corporate media. But Matt Taibbi, independent journalist, somebody who I have followed for, I don't even know, like maybe 15 years, for a long time anyway, was handed over what he referred to as the Twitter files. So Elon Musk, while he's busy rebuilding Twitter's engineering department and getting the back end of the platform that he has taken control of over the last month in working order, he has handed over or leaked documents over to a couple independent journalists, Matt Taibbi being the first, Barry Weiss being the other. She has not released anything, and I'm assuming she is doing her due diligence on some of the stuff that she has received. But I'm going to go through some of the highlights here, and then you can stop me where you want and fill in where you want here. But so this is, all these Twitter files are mostly in relation to the New York Post's or the Twitter suppression of the New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop, which, if you guys remember, Twitter basically, they suspended the New York Post Twitter account, a newspaper of 200 years plus, for publishing what they declared were hacked materials. And not only could you not, the New York, you couldn't share the link in Twitter. You couldn't DM the link. If you shared the link, it was banned. Like the story was effectively banned on Twitter. So much so that and this is part of the revelation here, the press secretary at the time, Kayleigh McEnany, her account was suspended for just referencing the fact that Twitter took down the Post's story, right? She wasn't even talking about the story. She referenced the fact that the Twitter took down the story, and they suspended her account. So some of the revelations in here were basically that they knew early on that they were abusing the hacked materials clause within their platform. Matt Taibbi makes it abundantly clear that both parties had access to some of these tools, but that the left primarily was slanted or imbalanced hard to the left, that they used these the ability for Twitter to silence and censor some information. They did a lot of it, let's just say. And again, the biggest story of them all, the Hunter Biden laptop story, has been shown basically that they knew that they were banning this story for something that they could not prove, and they did it anyway and didn't care, and they were not going to change there. So I don't know if you got to read through some of these Twitter files there from Matt Taibbi. If you had some revelation there that was something more specific that you kind of wanted to bring up. These were censorship of both random Joe Twitter accounts and celebrity Twitter accounts. They just ripped across all these accounts and basically became a narrative-changing platform in favor of Democrats and left-leaning policies. I don't know. Did you have any initial takes? I'm assuming this is not the end of all this stuff, so we'll have more to talk about here in the coming weeks here. But what were your initial takes on some of the Twitter files, some of the revelations, and then we'll talk about the backlash on Matt Taibbi himself.
Well, obviously knocked me over with a feather. I couldn't believe to read that Twitter did all this intentionally. I was shocked, my very core. I mean, the fact that the Biden laptop turned out to be true, who could have possibly have seen that coming at that time? It raises the same question it did for me back then that it does now, is why? Because this is nuts. Like, asking a private company to do this is insane. And a private company agreeing to do this is insane.
Yeah, and it's not like they just...
doesn't make any sense.
And it wasn't they just did it once or like they had open communication. There was lines of communication open to politicians to make recommendations to censor accounts through recommendations. And you'll probably see this word handled thrown out a lot because that was basically, I think that was Vijaya Gade when there was a internal communication, and that's what most of these Twitter files are internal communications. One of them was just like, hey, look at these accounts, and reply was just handled. Like, hey, we took care of them. See ya, thanks. And so this open line of communication, this channel where people who were controlling the narrative could just push their thumb on that narrative and make sure that was only the one being out there is, I mean, this is why there's a lawsuit of Missouri v. Biden in the government's basically a violation of the First Amendment for a bunch of people, those doctors and what the lawsuits there, which entail that the idea that Twitter was literally just a arm of the government. It was the Disinformation Bureau before the Disinformation Bureau.
Yes, that is the correct way to put it. There is not enough of a delineation between Twitter and the federal government. I think that has been firmly established to the point of you couldn't even argue it. So the idea that this was allowed, like, I mean, we all want to compare everything to Nazi Germany. This is propaganda, like straight out of Joseph Goebbels couldn't have dreamed of this kind of reach or legitimacy. Like, this is nuts. This is supposed to be an impartial, independent business that can do what it wants and set its own rules. But then we find out the federal government's putting a thumb on the scale. Everybody should be more outraged by this than they are. It doesn't matter how mad you are about this. It's not enough. It should be more outrage.
Yeah, and there was, I guess, to give some credit, like Ro Khanna, Congressman, basically said, hey, this looks like a Bill of Rights problem here. I'm not worried about your Twitter policy because Vijay Gade tried to explain away why, again, they were suppressing the Hunter Biden story. And even deep down, he must realize, hey, this is not right. And so the fact that nothing was done for such a long period of time, I feel like is now the story, right? Again, we're back to the cover-up is the story. And so the fact that they knew all this almost immediately, that what they were doing was wrong and that the information was probably accurate. Like that's a whole separate side of this. And it turns out that they, it was all true and accurate and whatnot. And the whole suppression was unjustified from the beginning. But the fact that they knew all that and just did it anyway shows that, listen, I mean, I guess that, right, after seeing all this, and again, I had assumed all this was true already, right? There was nothing that was surprising per se. There were some specifics that were intriguing to read, but the general gist that Twitter was controlling information is not shocking at all, other than it shouldn't happen. But it makes the whole Elon takeover of Twitter, like it amplifies the importance of how much because it literally stopped the narrative in its tracks when it happened, right? So now, and we'll go to the next part, is how Taibbi's getting dragged by the corporate press because he's doing the bidding of the world's richest man, doing PR. He's the PR guy for the world's richest man or whatever they want to freaking say. But he was given the story because he's basically not been a partisan hack for 15 years, right? He was once adored by the left because he was very critical of the Bush administration and the war in Iraq and a bunch of stuff that's how I found him. And then because he was consistent and maintained skepticism on establishment leaders and governments around the world, specifically our own, he fell out of favor with the liberal when they became in power, when he questioned things through the Obama administration and now through the Biden administration. And now he's being, again, being labeled Substack man and, again, the PR department for the world's richest man. And the idea that Matt Taibbi, I mean, listen, to his credit, he's been dealing with it long enough before this that he knew this was probably the way it was going to go, because it looks as though he's defending the right, and liberal media cannot have that. So the smearing of Matt Taibbi just kind of outs the scumbags of the corporate press, and it just allows me to mute them on Twitter much easier. So I don't know. I don't know if you've actually followed Matt Taibbi's writings over the years or have any takes on him as a journalist or whatever. But the idea, it's, again, not shocking to see the reaction from the lefty media. But, I mean, come on, man. These people are scum of the earth.
I mean, I've been reliably informed that Matt Taibbi is both a Russian asset,
of course,
a never Trumper, a Trumpist, a Putin stooge, and also just a partisan hack. I mean, I've reliably informed that he is all of these things.
He's alt-right.
Alt-right. I forgot alt-right. How could I have forgotten that? Damn it, I'm getting soft. All right. Matt Taibbi, as it turns out, is just a reporter, and a pretty good reporter who is consistent in his takes, and he's consistent in his values, and he was very opposed to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and he maintained that same stance even when Barack Obama was the one drone bombing the world. Just because it was a Democrat in charge, he didn't suddenly lose his values. He kept going, no, you're covering stuff up. You're lying. Stop. And for that, the powers that be, the corporate press, and all those beautiful members who are so advocates of peace and prosperity for all, turned their back on him in about a half a second. And then when they came out and they said Trump is clearly a Russian asset, and here's all the proof, Matt Taibbi was one of the few voices on the left going, there is absolutely nothing here. This is insanity that you're even publishing this because this is crazy.
Yeah, I think you're right. The Russiagate thing was kind of the flipping point for most of the left because they had all bought in on the Russia hoax. And Taibbi was like, wait a minute. And nobody was waiting a minute.
No, nobody wanted to have anything to do with it. It was just he's been a very good reporter. And I've listened to him a bunch talk about his approach and everything else, and he's got a fascinating approach to it. He says the problem today is when his father was a reporter. He said, when my father was a reporter, it wasn't a white collar job. It was a blue collar job. You had a bunch of guys that didn't have a ton of money that were out there. They weren't Ivy League. They weren't anything else. They were it was more of a trade. It was than anything else. Now it's not that way anymore. Now it's people with an ideology that they're trying to push one way or the other, and they're not like digging in and trying to find the story. They're taking what's handed to them, regurgitating the talking points of the government, and then collecting giant checks and giving each other trophies. Yeah, that's not journalism. That's propaganda. Like I said, Joseph Goebbels couldn't imagine anything this effective that we have currently today.
Yeah, it was great.
So it's great that we have Matt Taibbi.
Yeah, and I said I think piggybacking exactly what you just said there. So Ben Collins, I think he's an MSNBC reporter. He came out and he was one of the guys who was basically saying that, Taibbi was doing PR for the world's richest man. I'm like, you do PR for the government. Like, get the F out of here, dude. I'm like, get the hell out of here. Such a scumbag. So
thank you.
These people just outed themselves. Like anybody who's anti-information being released or is somewhat envious the fact that Elon gave them the leaks or whatever, like I don't know what the deal is, but go Matt Taibbi. Like I said, if I could, I may just be a paid subscriber to Matt Taibbi just because now he's behind Glenn Greenwald. He's my, they're 1 and 1A as far as reporters for me. But let's I've heard Elon, and Elon did a multi-hour Spaces that I listened to where he was basically fielding questions from a bunch of journalists and whatnot. And like even Spike Cohen was in the panel. He eventually his phone crapped out, so he didn't get to ask a question. But there was a bunch of people asking really, I thought, provocative questions or questions that were kind of making us think about where Elon was going next, and Elon was just taking him in stride. I don't know if you heard this, but he basically said, if I kill myself, it wasn't, it's not real. So he's basically put all that to rest, basically saying, hey, I know, people were literally questioning his safety in this call, and he was like, listen, I've had security before. He's like, if somebody wanted to take me out, he's like, this is Elon saying, he's like, they could take me out. I'm not hard to find, but I'm not worried, whatever. So, but in that Spaces, among other things, and I would encourage people, if you can go back and listen to those things or read a report of that stuff, there was a lot of really good information there. But basically, where I want to talk about was what's next here for these Twitter files, right? So the Twitter files, this version was just the Hunter Biden laptop, and surrounding the New York Post, the suspension of their account and the suppression of that story. But Elon talked about January 6th. Elon talked about COVID. He talked about some really hot topics post-election, what happened right after the election of 2020. These are all things that I'm assuming, have already been given, leaks, that is, of internal documents to Matt Taibbi and Bari Weiss. He mentioned those two by name. I'd have to go check and find out where Bari Weiss is publishing her work, but you can find her pretty easily. She used to work for the New York Times. She kind of wrote a "Why I'm Leaving the New York Times" op-ed kind of thing at one point. So I'm assuming we're going to get more information from these Twitter files. I don't expect there to ever, I say this all the time, nothing ever happens. Nothing is ever going to happen from this. But other than hopefully enough people realize what had happened and the rest of the media is discredited. Like, that's really the only thing I can hope for. Like, I don't expect any kind of punitive damages from Vijay Gadde to anybody within Twitter, to be honest with you. Like, I don't expect any person ever to be held accountable at all, zero, nothing. And so the only thing that can really happen, if I call it happening, is that the minds of the masses can be awakened to the idea that they should not be getting their news from the corporate press. And people like Matt Taibbi, people like Bari Weiss, people like Glenn Greenwald, those are the people where you should be surrounding yourself with independent journalists, maybe, or at least a diverse set of opinions, and some opinions that are purposely out of the mainstream are there for a reason. And I think that hopefully more people realize that there's alternative to information than basically the decades-old mainstream media.
I think if we get more people looking at that, that's a win from this entire situation. And I think that it's incumbent on people like you, like me, on people that listen to this show, to share this as widely and as far as you can to make this part of public knowledge. I think most people that listen to this show are aware we operate in a different stratosphere than most other people. Like, we have conversations where people say things and you stare at them like, how can you still think that's true? That's been disproven so long ago, but it's never entered their atmosphere. They are wholly unaware of all these things that exist. They're wholly unaware of Ashley Biden's diary. They're wholly unaware of Hunter Biden's laptop. They're wholly unaware of all of these things that are just common knowledge, that are accepted, that are true, that we know. But this is something that you can put out there, because this isn't something that's so awful that they can't possibly come to terms with it, like some of the other things I just mentioned are. This is something where you can use it as a, hey, look at this. This is what we've been saying for 3 years, is that this is wrong. This is the government putting a thumb on the scale of public discussion to dictate it towards its own ends. This was intentional. This was suppression of ideas. This is awful, and you need to accept that the government engages in this activity. Because if you can't accept that our government is not benevolent, that our government is not even an indifferent operator, but is in fact a malevolent operator proceeding towards its own ends, then there's not even a conversation to be had. The conversation has to start there. You have to stop trusting that these people are good. They're not. I don't know how much more evidence you need, but this is probably a good entry point to share with people and say, hey, this is what they do. The people that you are defending through heaven and hell, this is who they are. This is who Joe Biden is. This is who the people that run the government are. Stop trusting them, stop believing them, and stop listening to the media, whatever you do, because the media has once again demonstrated that if you just give them a trophy and a raise, they will fall in lockstep with whatever bullshit propaganda the government wants produced. As long as they get their news time Emmy, God bless them. They're just going to go for it.
Yeah, and let me punctuate all that, and we can get everybody out of here and get you back to enjoying the sunny weather here. So let me punctuate all that with a tweet by Matt Taibbi after he did all this stuff. So I haven't read this article from Mediate that is titled "The 27 Most Embarrassing Reactions to Taibbi Threat About Twitter Censoring Hunter Biden." I don't know if that's in favor of Taibbi or anti-Taibbi. I don't really know, but I think Taibbi's tweet here is perfect to end on here. So looking forward, this is Taibbi speaking in a tweet here, dated December 3rd. Looking forward to going through all the tweets complaining about quote-unquote PR for the richest man on earth and seeing how many of them have run stories for anonymous sources at the FBI, CIA, the Pentagon, the White House, etc. Like, that's exactly right? So all these people complaining about Matt Taibbi doing the bidding of the richest man in the world are all doing the bidding of the most powerful institutions in the world, and they don't even see anything wrong with it. Or they don't care. That's probably a better assessment of their actions.
As long as they get their trophy, their paycheck, and all of the esteem and acceptance into their little elitist club, they don't care about anybody else thinks.
Yeah.
So this is where, unless it's common knowledge, unless it's widely accepted, then they are not forced to change any view. And that's going to be the beginning of the end, is once we can get these people to realize we don't take you seriously anymore because you still live this way. So you can get laughed out of every conversation and immediately dismissed to the point where you're an embarrassment to be had on your little panels and your little expert conglomeratory things. Just literally go away, because nobody has time for you until you acknowledge that you are nothing more than a mouthpiece for the government and show some level that you're willing to change. Otherwise, please go sit down at the kids' table. The adults are going to talk over here. You can go and keep all your money and keep all your trophies, and you can do your little podcasts and whatever else. Just serious people aren't going to listen to you anymore. That's what I want to get to.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. So, all right, Mr. Hussong, let's get everybody out of here. We did about an hour here. So again, I'm going to upload this now. It'll be up in I don't know, an hour or so. But hopefully, if you're still with us, again, you'll share the video, subscribe to the channel, and like the video. And Mr. Hussong, anything you'd like to leave the folks with until next Monday?
No, just Florida's really nice this time of year, in case you're looking for somewhere to go.
Make the USA Florida again. Is that right?
There you go.
All right.
Sure.
All right. On that note, let's get you out of here. We'll see you, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next Monday.